Hello guys, and welcome to day 3 of the Pineapple Support Healing Through Kink. My name is Kelly and I work for Pineapple Support. We are a non-profit organisation that specifically provides mental health to online adult industry performers. As always, I'm going to thank you for attending today and thank you to our sponsors, loyal fans, Kink, Clips of Sale, Shiny Bound and Feet for Cash. And obviously, if you are enjoying the event and you'd like us to do more events such as this, then please do head over to our website, which is pineapplesupport.org, and make any small donation that you can, because every little helps. Today, however, we kick off with T. Murray, who is the author of Kink and the Cure and a Therapeutic Kink Practitioner. The presentation today is called Exploring Therapeutic Kink. Hello, T and Izzy, how you doing?
Hello.
Well,
thank you for having us here.
Today. I've been reading up on you, and I've got lots of I'm really excited about this. So I'm going to hand you straight over and let you get going. Just so you know that if anyone has any queries or questions, they normally put them in the chat or in the Q&A. So if you don't mind keeping an eye on those, if anyone, so we can keep the audience interactive.
Absolutely.
Thanks, guys. I'll pop in when you've finished. Bye.
Sounds great. Thanks.
Hello there, folks. Thanks for having us here. I'm really excited to have an opportunity to share with you, and I want to encourage you to throw your thoughts into the chat actively. We're going to be doing a lot of, this is an interactive experience. I'm going to share a little bit about what it is that I do, what has brought the two of us here to be sharing with you today, and then lead you through some activities so that you can be exploring your own paths and possible paths through the concepts of kink as a therapeutic practice. To introduce my partner here, this is Izzy. Okay.
Oh, I was just going to say, so I'm here today to offer my own personal experience of working with T as part of a healing practice in whatever way that turns out to work well.
I'm still seeing Kelly's face primary on the screen there. Is there anything else coming up for anyone? Okay, you're seeing me. Okay, great. Just making sure. So a little bit about how we got here. Therapeutic kink, when I started into this practice, was not really a thing. I started playing in the kink community in Seattle, Washington, back in the early 2000s, and I kept getting told by the people around me that, you know, you got to be careful, because while kink can be therapeutic, it's not therapy. And that was a thing that really stuck with me. And I found myself doing scenes with people regularly that ended up being really therapeutic and helping people work through specific traumas that people would say, hey, I want to work on reprogramming this thing within myself. I want to do you know, a really heavy scene involving belts, because I have a phobia of belts from I got hit from my dad, and I want to turn that into a pleasurable thing. And I saw all kinds of people intentionally using kink on their own to reprogram their own mental triggers. And I thought, well, what if we could do this intentionally? Of course, there wasn't anything at that time out in the market around it. So we just started gathering stories. I just started interviewing people as part of a degree program that I talked to this hippie school in Vermont. Goddard College was interested in exploring this idea. Could kink be intentionally used as a tool to help heal sexual trauma and institutionalize sexual shame? And that's kind of where it all started. From that set of interviews, which included Izzy as one of our first interviews, grew to a play similar to the Vagina Monologues called A Kink and the Cure. So if you go to akinkandthecure.com, you'll see the website for this play that has been performed at a number of universities, at the American Association of Sex Educators, Counselors, and Therapists Conference. And all it is really is a compilation of people's stories of how they've used kink successfully and unsuccessfully to address their own traumas. And from that, we've been doing work one-on-one with clients. I work with people directly doing teams, and I work with people virtually, because what I've discovered over the years is that so much of this is really just through our own mental blocks of what we see as getting in our way from, as my mentor Alina would say, owning our own pleasure. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're here to explore, is how people can own their own pleasure. There's a new part of this introduction that I keep forgetting that is really important for us sitting here in America. Now we've got people from all over the country, but one of the things that we've really been trying to do is own the fact that we are presenting to you from Aurora, Colorado, which is, how do I say, is probably the unceded territory of the Arapaho, Ute, Cheyenne, and Sioux nations that were here before us. And that's where we are at, delivering from you. If you could throw in the chat just the cities and places that you're from around, I'd love to know where our communities are at right now.
Excellent. We got Des Moines and Holland, Reno, London, Sweden. Wonderful. All over.
All around the planet. That's beautiful.
Barcelona, yeah.
Some of you are up late, and some of you are in the middle of your day or having breakfast. So. So I want to start by taking you through the exercise, or a shortened version of the exercise that I take my new clients through when we're talking about exploring what might be possible for them in therapeutic kink, because it's not the right path for everyone. Just like finding the right massage therapist that works with your body, or the right mental health therapist that uses the right kinds of tools to help you with your trauma, finding someone to help you with this is just as complicated. So the first thing that I do with people is try to figure out what it is that they're trying to get into. And then, is there a good fit? Am I the right person for that? Because I'm not good at everything. I have the places that I like to play. I have the things that I work well with. And then there are other people that I need to refer to someone else. And so I take them through this exercise. We're going to look at what some kink archetypes are. So if you go to, I think I can share my screen, can't I? Mm-hmm. We're going to 15, but you can go to BDSMtest.org as well. Yeah, that's kind of. So put this in the chat. Oh. Now, this is not an all-encompassing list of kinky archetypes, but it's a good starting point for the conversation that we're going to have. And this site is a place where you can take kind of like a kinky Myers-Briggs, a kinky personality type test, and it gives you a general view of where you might fall, both interest and lack of interest, top and bottom, on these various archetypes, whether you're dominant and how dominant might you be, or submissive, and it gives nice little descriptions in case this is terminology you're not familiar with. And for a lot of people, the fun part of taking this is that you'll get things that pop up on the top of your list, like rigor, that maybe you don't know what that is, but by answering the questions, it allows you to go, oh, this is an area of kink that I might be able to explore that I didn't even know was of interest to me. It's just in my fantasies, in the back of my head. I was always the person tying up the pirate when we played pirates as kids, or that I was always the person who did it. I didn't know that I could look into being a rigger. Oh, and now we've got a whole new place to explore. Mm-hmm. So what I'd like you to do is look through this list and write down just for yourself. You don't have to share it here. What some of the, like, maybe top 3 to 5 things that pique your curiosity for yourself, and just write them down for yourself. And under each, give yourself a little bit of a reason as to why. And what we find is that by digging into this a little bit, by saying, oh, I am interested in the idea of a slave. If I'm not showing this to anyone, and I don't have to admit it to anyone, I can admit it to myself that the idea of being a slave is a little intriguing. But why? Is it that you've got fantasies about it? Like you saw
Star Wars.
Star Wars, right? Return of the Jedi. So naming it specifically. You
Yes.
saw Return of the Jedi, and you identified with the experience of Leia, or and that's just been in your head, and so you write down a little bit of like, yeah, there's this movie scene that always comes up, or maybe it's I don't know why, and you just kind of like let yourself go for a couple of sentences, maybe a paragraph of just where do you think this comes from, or what might be behind it for you. The part of this that ends up really being rewarding is that once you can own for yourself without the worry that anybody else is going to see it, that something is of interest to you, you can start realizing that there are people all over the world, thousands, and I'll start with thousands, not hundreds and maybe thousands, but thousands and tens of thousands of people that like the same thing that you do. And you can start setting down this idea that because I like being a rope bunny, or because I want to be prey, or because I like being a brat, that I must be somehow abnormal. That makes me too different to find partners that want to play, or a community that I can work with. Have you seen this type of thing play out for yourself?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the thing that I would add is, these things, whatever my top 3 would be, or whatever 3 things first come to mind for me, have changed a lot over the course of my life. And I've actually gotten really comfortable with my top number changing all the time. Like, is this a month or a season where like my brattiness is really just at the top of everything? Or is this a time when my rigor side is really, really kind of present and in play, or maybe my rope bunny side, because I do both, and I do self-tying as well, right? And I started getting comfortable with how the flow of whatever kink is on top has a lot to do with what's going on in my life. And I think that just sitting in that flow, and like that is also normal, was really powerful for me. Because I think it starts to normalize the expression and the presence of these kinks, and how fundamentally connected to my personality they are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a few questions from our participants. If you've got any like inquiries just in what we've talked about so far. We've got another activity we're going to head into in a minute, but I'd love to just hear from where you're at. How's this landing for you? Did you come across any surprises when you looked at that list? Like, oh, I didn't know being a rope bunny was a thing, but I think I might be a rope bunny.
Or maybe everybody needs a minute to be looking at things, because we kept talking all the way. So. Okay, let's start with the test. Okay.
Yeah, and the test takes a little while. Don't feel like you have to take the full test. You can just go to the info page and read through the things. But if you want to take the test, feel free. It just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, I think it took me like an hour.
What about feeling too controlled in your life and wanting to be a sub to relinquish control? What a common and beautiful experience. Mm-hmm. And thank you for sharing that, Melissa. That I would say is probably speaking with a lot of sex workers, pro doms as part of this work, and then my own experience as well. That particular archetype of someone who is a powerful person in their world, movers and shakers, politicians, lawyers and doctors, people, moms that are in control of their entire world all the time, and they're always looked to being in charge. They want a space where it's okay to just let go. And it is, I would say, one of the most common reasons that people seek out sex workers, in my experience professionally, outside of sex, is that it's not about sex for a lot of them. They just want to be in a space where someone else is making the decisions about what's being done. And the way that I end up tying this to therapeutic work, not just like in this, client relationship, but helping people take it back into their lives, is by saying, how can you create that container for yourself in your life? Can you set up with your partner where you have, no decision Sundays. I'm not making any choices today. You're deciding where we're going to eat, what we're going to do, right? And so there's almost this little bit of like, what do we call it? Topping from the bottom, right? Like, you're going to do all of this on Sunday. You're in charge of everything and handing that over. Yeah. Thoughts?
I do. I have two. So the first one is, one of the things that we discovered in our own play is that when you have a no decision Sunday, right? One of the things that starts coming up for the other person is suddenly being present to, I get to choose what I want. And maybe I'm not even sure what I want anymore, because it's been such a long time since I asked myself what I wanted without having to check with every other person in the world. And that can be healing for your partner too, depending on where your partner's at. So I think that's really important. Yeah. And then the other side is, I think we often forget, I saw a switch in the comments, Nanook, there we go. One of the things that I think we often overlook is that every time you have one of these very intense sides, feeling too controlled in your life, and oh, you just want to give up and have somebody else take care of you for a while, there's somebody on the other side of that, right? For every person who feels too controlled, there's somebody who feels completely out of control. And all they want is a small slice of time where they get to call the shots. And I think that also shows up a lot in sex work, and also like kind of gets weirdly overlooked in our society. And there are a bunch of kinks that are that way. Places where, you know, you've heard about, or you've seen, or it's really normalized in media and television, one side. But anytime there's that one side, there's at least the other side, and sometimes a lot of other flavors in between that are all connected and related.
Yeah. Izzy and I have been in this like flow of switching everything, recognizing that there is so much value on you know, through the whole spectrum of these experiences. So I totally identify with you, Anouk, in that tendency to switch back and forth, so that you can experience both the control and the release at higher levels. Because often when we're in control in our lives, we're actually not totally in control. We're still at the mercy of the system we're working in and whatnot. I want to highlight a thing here about a question comes up. Well, why can't, you know, why would you need to see someone for this? And can't you just get this from a partner? You know, you go out to, you can find a play partner that does this. Why would I pay for someone to play with me? And the point is that I've experienced a lot of people who end up giving things away of themselves. They end up feeling like, oh, if I want to experience cool bondage work, if I want to get suspended and tied up, I'm going to have sex with somebody, right? I'm going to have to emotionally invest myself at least into becoming friends with, currying favor with, you know, getting so-and-so to like me enough to tie me up. And then when we get together, I owe them something because they're doing all this work to tie me up. And so then there becomes this weird exchange that isn't really transparent, right? We think it's transparent and, oh, it's okay that we're just friends. But by creating a container that says, look, this is an exchange. You don't owe me a fucking thing. You want to do meditative bondage and not have anybody tie you up? That's what this is for. And it's what I expect that I want to see more of in the world, is that people can get what they want. They can own their pleasure and the things that they want, ask for it, and get that thing without having to non-consensually or compromise their own values to get this thing that should be available.
So I do want to make sure to go back and correct your language just a little bit. You can get meditative bondage where someone is tying you up without someone touching you sexually, because you said without tying you up. Oh, so thanks. just to be clear. And the piece that I want to add is, when you are choosing to make it an above board transaction in that way, it also means that there is no concern of putting an emotional labor on someone that you didn't really discuss whether they were up for that or not. Because asking somebody to provide you a therapeutic service who is not a therapeutic practitioner is kind of a lot to ask.
Yeah. And, you know, the consent conversation, which you've taught me so much about, like I love that there was another presentation here called the the nuance of kink or something along those lines. And we talk a lot about the nuance of consent. And this relates to Chris's question, like, what if negative experiences during previous kink has made it difficult to get back into that kink being therapeutic? And we both have our own personal experiences with that, with other players and with each other. And for me, it's really been about learning how to have, well, I'll say, more advanced consent conversations, and recognizing that we so easily make assumptions about what something means, right? Even this list of archetypes, right? You look at there and you say, I want to be a brat, or I'm a brat. And someone says, oh, great, I'm a brat tamer. But are you my kind of brat tamer? Do you like to tame brats like me, or do you like to tame brats in general? Because I might be a different kind of brat than you can actually handle, right? And when you're exploring these kinks, sometimes we don't even know why we're digging into it, right? You say, I know that I'm drawn to flogging. And you might say, okay, I think that there's something therapeutic in there for me, but I don't know what it is. So I need to go out and I need to find someone that really knows how to flog well. And you find someone who has a good reputation, and they're like, great. And you've had the conversation. Hey, you like flogging? Yeah, you want to do some flogging? Well, let's set up a flogging scene, and I get you up on the rack. And what comes out of my bag, but like a hard rubber, like where the rubber is all kind of shredded and scaly flogger. Like, this thing's gonna leave marks and maybe a few holes, right? Is that what you signed up for?
No, that's not what I meant.
That was not. But this is flogging. This is flogging.
I prefer, elk and goat skin. Like, I'm way more on maybe a little deer. Like, I'm on that soft end of the spectrum. We didn't talk about that. Whoops.
And that's where that nuance starts coming into play, where when we think of it as just play partners, we try to get to the play a little bit too fast. We rush through the consent conversation because we want to get to the fun part, and we miss these important details, because if I get you up on the rack and I start flogging you, are you going to feel like you can say no because you've already said yes? No. Like, and that's where a lot of people get, they feel like they can't say no, and it's not quite safe word yet. It's just, that was not the kind of flogging that I thought, and then you're in it. And that's how we get re-traumatized, by engaging in play that, like Chris said, we thought it was going to be therapeutic, it was safe, and then suddenly it's not. We're really unclear on how to do that. And that's part of what we do in this work. And not just us. I know that there are other people out there practicing this as well. This is a growing field, and I'm so happy to see so many, like a whole conference on healing through kink makes me so happy, because this was just unheard of 10 years ago. That the consent piece of this, and making sure that the negotiations are clear before stepping into the play, is so important to allow us to heal those places where it used to be unsafe and you want it to be safe again.
So my two pieces for that is, one, I also want to call attention to that maybe, I'm the bottom or the receiver in this scene, and I do get up on the rack, and T, as the top, pulls out this rubber, oh my goodness, giant flogger, and the moment it touches my skin, I red. Right? So maybe I don't have any feeling that I'm obligated, and I red right away. There can also be trauma on the top side of being shamed that you chose to do something that the other person didn't like. Some people, as a top, have never gotten a red, and it can be traumatic in and of itself, especially depending on how the receiver responds. Oh my God, I can't believe you did that. What were you thinking? Has a tendency to traumatize people and it has a tendency to happen in those miscommunications. So trauma is not exclusively for bottoms. Like, let's just really call that out. Also, I kind of want to, let me tell just a little piece of my story. I love this thing that Chris said about negative experiences. So I'm going to try to tell this in a soft way, because my story is kind of horrible. So I had a traumatic event with somebody that I believed that I could trust, that resulted in me having trouble having any kind of physical contact with any other human being at all. I was having trouble with handshakes. I didn't want to hug my friends. And it got to a point where I'd been talking to my therapist, I'd been talking to my partner, I'd been talking to my friends, and it wasn't getting better. So I turned to T, because I know that T does this professionally. And I said, is there anything you can do to help me?
And we
And
weren't
I think,
lovers at the time.
right, no, we were just friends. And thank you, that's important. So we were friends. We'd been friends for a long time, but we were not partners or connected in that way at the time. And I think it's really important to kind of have a little perspective of why it was that T was the person that I went to. I wanted something where I wasn't needing to feel the kind of safe and established emotional relationship that you get out of a partner, because I wasn't going to be able to do it. I couldn't get that safe with my friends who I loved and had known for years. I needed somebody who was going to set all of that crap aside, all of it, and it was going to be an intellectual, analytical approach on this trauma that was just, it was too big to feel safe. I didn't feel safe. I wasn't going to feel safe. That's exactly what we called out. This is why you go to therapists when you have traumatic events, right? Because it's a person who is at a distance for you. And sometimes what's happening in these professional therapeutic relationships and interactions is exactly that you don't feel safe and you don't know how to access this anymore. And so you're in a space where you get to call all the shots and everything is only at the distance that you say is okay. And you know that the other person has reason, has a reputation for you to believe that they can hold your boundaries without any pushing, without any issues. And I think that's one of the reasons that this work, in my opinion, needs to be professional. It needs to, it's a scam call thing. We need to have this in our sex work, right? Whether there's sex or not, because having the access to people where there is that professional level of safety and distance can be so important to the healing process.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was like hearing the story of how that helped for you, and not my role in it, but your decision to make this choice for yourself, that you could use, you could step into some of the activities that created the trauma to reprogram that trauma, and that's the core of this exploration, and that's why this workshop is called Exploring Therapeutic Kink, because I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't claim to be, and when I work with people, my request is that they need to have a relationship with a licensed therapist, so that there is a triangle of accountability, so that we can be doing our work and know that the mental work that they also need to go through to talk to a therapist that's helping them with that, is that all sides are covered. And the therapist can see if, oh, maybe this is not actually a healthy thing for you to be doing. They can call that out because they're going to see it. And then when you're like, oh, I just uncovered a whole bunch of like childhood trauma from us doing this spanking scene, we're not trying to deprogram that as well. You can take that to your therapist and then come back when there's other stuff for you to uncover. Yeah. That's why this is this conversation more than a lecture. Nanook put in another comment about how they're setting up a DS coaching business, which is going to be non-sexual. And I want to call this out because knowing you made the work that I do in this really made me ask a question that I didn't even know was there. It wasn't even a question I didn't even know I could ask, because I thought the same thing. And I was going to set up something that was non-sexual in this work, so that I was just doing kink and BDSM. And then we come across the fact that sex means different things to different people. And for a lot of people, there is no way to do kink without it being sex. Sometimes for people it's orgasmic, and even if it's not orgasmic, it is sexual, right? Some people, they have a really strong mental line. For them, kink is not part of their sex. It's pain processing, pleasure processing, but it doesn't cross the mental barrier into how they define themselves as a sexual person. But for a lot of people it does. And understanding that, the recognizing that I could have non-penetrative sessions with people where nobody touched anything inside the bikini line, and I would say that that was non-sexual, but this person is still at the end of a session sex high from where we went and what happened and the loss of control. And because it's, you know, sometimes we're playing with teasing and sensuality, and it takes you right up to that edge or over into an orgasmic state. And for a lot of people, that's still sex. And we just need to be honest about it. I realized I was trying to say that I wanted to make it non-sexual because I was ashamed of calling myself a sex worker. I was like, you know what, I just need to let that go. Yes, I do sex work. Even when I'm working with people where there's nothing inside the bikini line, it's still sex work.
Yeah.
Some more comments in here.
Yes, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for stepping in. I really appreciate that support, and I dream of a world like that too.
And that's a place where I have been reached out to by a number of people here in the Denver community, mostly because here in Denver, I was able to perform Kink and the Cure at the ASECT conference a couple of years ago. And I've done it little kind of mini presentations of it for just some like lunch and learn networking groups of therapists who were like, oh, so you're someone that I can send clients to, even if it's just to talk to about their kink stuff, because as a therapist, like I want to support them in not shaming it, but I don't know the language, I don't know the culture, I don't know what's going on in there. And so we still do virtual at this point talk sessions that are kink focused. And so I have clients all over the country that I work with right now, and we've just turned a lot of the things that we used to do in person into things that we now do online. Even being able to do bondage with people is easier because of Shay Tizano's book on tying and flying, the art of self-bondage. Pick it up on Amazon and give yourself access to being able to tie yourself up, even suspend yourself from your home. It's a great book for opening access for so many people that felt like they can't do any of that unless they go find someone that has this background. I'm just reading through the other comments. Oh, you have other thoughts you want to throw in there?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess if we have a pause, absolutely. So Chris, thank you so much for letting us pick on you so much. It's been wonderful. I really love all of your feedback. Engage with. Wonderful. I'm delighting in the engaging with. And I want to offer just this like share of part of my experience that I think is really powerful. And it's the reason that I still continually talk about the service that T provided me. The first thing that T did was set up sessions where we were going to be in the same physical space, and all physical contact was initiated by me, 100%. There was no time that there was going to be a gesture in my direction. There was no time that there was going to be an unthinking hug. There was nothing, like, you know, and I think we played board games or card games or something.
And we watched movies where we would sit down to watch a movie. I would sit down
with space between us.
And I would sit down so that they knew where I was in space and not move. And it was not just, you know, body language. It was clearly communicated. Look, I'm going to sit here with my hands in my lap so we can watch this movie. You can sit as close as you want or not, as you like. And if you want any contact from me, say so or initiate it. But otherwise, I will not be touching you or reaching out or even like putting my arm out like, do you want, like, no offer of cuddle will come from me, not from a lack of desire for it, but because it's entirely in your hands.
In my court.
to do so.
Right. And it was made really clear that like any contact was desired and welcomed. So I wasn't anxious about accidentally doing something that T didn't want, because for me, my consent having been violated in this way, I'm just as worried that I'm violating somebody else's consent the same way. I'm very paranoid about these things. And so, you know, so the first couple times, like I was like 2 people away when we were watching this movie. But just being in a space where the space meant that everything was 100% in my control was profound. And I think that a lot of the time when we get hurt this way and we're asking for help, this kind of a solution just doesn't even occur. Like that somebody might understand what's going on for us to that level doesn't occur. It certainly never occurred to me. And so I think that there are options when you're skilled, when you have some background, when you have whatever, like there are options for healing these things, no matter what it is that got hurt. And it's really just a matter of being willing to listen and explore on both sides, all sides, however many sides are involved, right? Until you find the thing that feels soothing and healing and safe in a way that seemed like safety wasn't possible. But I wanted to make sure to offer up into the space, like part of what was so profound for me was that, I mean, an option that I hadn't thought of, but specifically was being given space where I had control over the thing that had hurt me.
Glad to hear that. There's a monologue in A Kink and the Cure that speaks to your experience, Chris. And the monologues in this performance are not one person's story. What I did was interview hundreds of people, and then I took all of the similar stories of the people that had no abuse in their life at all, but were still really kinky, people that had child abuse, people that went through religious trauma, people that were abused as adults, and then took all of their common experiences and created a composite monologue that sounds like it's from one person, but it's actually the voices of many different people. And one of them is the story of how this person all of their trauma was inflicted in the BDSM community. They didn't have trauma before getting into it. It just sounded like fun. And once in it, they ended up with someone that they were told they could trust, and they trusted, and then they were abused, deeply emotionally, abused, and physically, sexually abused. And the coming out of that was really them saying, all of these different people saying that, I don't know what BDSM means to me anymore. Yeah, I know that BDSM, what it stands for, bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadomasochism, but that's not what it means. It means different things to different people. And I don't know and it used to mean a place of safety and comfort and exploration, but that all got taken away. And now they're having to redefine it. And one of the lines that was actually taken directly from one of the participants was, I know that it's a part of me. It's always going to be a part of me. And I'm learning how to live with that, to turn it into what's mine again. And that takes time. Like it's any type of grief, it's any type of trauma that we're healing from. It takes time and it takes intention. If we just let it sit there, it just kind of stays where it is for the most part. And that's why we need these types of practices where we can be working through them intentionally.
And why we need professionals who have an idea of what those steps look like. Just like in therapy, like you kind of, they talk about the 5 stages of anger, right? or I'm sorry, the five stages of grief, and like nobody would have known that those were things to be paying attention to if we hadn't gone and studied it, if we didn't have professionals who were looking into it, right? So
I'm going to take us into our next activity. We're about halfway through our program. And this is just, it's a thing I used to do. We would perform the play and then usually do a workshop afterwards or the next day. And it's this opportunity to just kind of allow you to look into your own experience around sex and kink. So we've got a Jamboard link there that you're welcome to click on if you want to participate. And we're going to start with just, if you, I can share my screen at the same time. Share screen. So this is a Jamboard. And if you go on this, you can click on the sticky note on the left-hand side. And you click a sticky note. And then what are your thoughts on, like, when you hear the words kinky sex, what comes up for you? Just a few thoughts, like what are things for you that come up when you hear kinky sex? And just put a little sticky note.
let's go ahead and everybody can just see.
Yummy. Ow. Yummy ow.
That counts.
Show up any thoughts you've got, and you'll notice they're anonymous. We can't see who posted which one. They're just thrown up there, so feel free to throw up your thoughts on kinky sex. Oh, you have a view only version, huh?
Well, that's not going to help.
I thought I had fixed that. I apologize.
Share on the link. Yeah, it says anyone. Okay.
Viewer, editor, done. All right, that should be permissions updated. And everybody in there, thank you for letting me know that that's what was going on. We got people writing and we got people, all right.
Nice.
Looks like you've got some scribbling. So the post-it note on, there we go, fun.
Okay.
Excellent.
Well, thank you for going and erasing that. That was very collaborative. I appreciate it. Oh, I love that one. Safely exploring taboos and limits. I love all of them, but the safely exploring taboos and limits is one of those that is very close to my heart. Vulnerable and open. Ooh, intimacy seems to be the biggest kink. I like that. Empowering, yeah. Trust, Wonderful. Thank you for everybody for joining in. Oh, yeah, that's another one very close to my heart. A good way to explore how shame can be something positive and fun to play with. Shame is something we talk a lot about. Sweet surrender. Yeah, me too. Access to your deepest fears and thoughts. Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Me too.
Destroying maladaptive socialization. Oh my goodness, how beautiful. Loving dominant. There's a great book called Loving Dominant, if you haven't picked it up. And another one, if you like Loving Dominant, that I will strongly recommend is In Defense of Masochism, which is such a great exploration of the fact that we keep looking at dominance and submission and sadism as masochism as like sides of a relationship. right? Or that if you want to be a masochist, you need to find a sadist, which is not actually the best way to go about that, because really the best person for a masochist is another masochist, because masochists understand the joy that they're looking for inside of it, and sadists, right, by definition of sadomasochism, and are that they're in it for the pain that they want to inflict. It's not actually about the other person at all. It's that they have their own desires for inflicting certain kinds of pain and seeing people struggle through that. And I'm not knocking it. It's just they're not actually as complementary as we've made them out to be. And if we can break that myth, it saves a lot of trauma and abuse just in breaking that, to just tell masochists, you don't need to go find a sadist. Sadists might not be your best bet. You got to be a particular type of masochist, one who wants pain that isn't about their own personal desire. Because, you know, in my experience, core sadists, they don't, it's how does Laura Antonou say it? I get happy when you stop liking the pain that I'm causing, is what Laura is fond of saying. And I love her work on this. It's great. So in moving to the next board, we're going to go over to the next frame. You click on this arrow up top. So this was thoughts on kinky sex. What about healing sex? Oh, we're at 10-minute warning. I thought we had a 90-minute session. Okay. So let's go to some thoughts on healing sex. If you can click on the arrow. So what would you differentiate? How do you, now that you put all these thoughts on kinky sex, is there a difference for you on healing sex? Tantra, Mistress Silk posted in the chat, Tantra.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Just so you know, I'm grabbing your Post-its and moving them because they just pile up in the corner if I don't. Unconditional love.
Love. Yeah. Emotional. One of mine would be hard work. Communicative. Yeah. Dealing with trauma together. Connection and intimate. I like how intimacy showed up on both. It's wonderful. Safe.
Trauma together. I love that.
I can do it if you want.
Rad work.
You can tell who is more of a presenter and who is more of a bureaucrat. Sex magic manifestation. Oh, I like that one too. Yeah.
Somatic.
Somatic growing together.
A lot of this practice of therapeutic kink was created, my practice, I should say, not the practice, but my practice of therapeutic kink has really been built around the idea of looking at all of the different therapeutic techniques that I could find and say, what out of each of these could be used in a kink setting to help people process. And Peter Levine's work on the book Waking the Tiger, the Body Keeps the Score, right? All of these works on muscle memory and how we hold on to so much in our physical selves that talk therapy just can't get to, EMDR just can't get to. They're all really useful tools. And one of the questions that came up was, what about when I've done all the work? I've been doing therapy for years. I've talked to people till my eyes bled and my throat was sore, and I've done the EMDR and I've done all of this work, and I still have these hangups. Why is this still a problem after all these years? I have people coming to me with it, and the answer is that we store stuff in our body that can't get out if we don't then reconnect to our bodies. And that somatic experience is so important as part of this healing. And you'll find a number of these books on the resources page under the website for A Kink and the Cure. Let's go ahead and go to our last frame here, which is to hear some thoughts on how you've experienced healing kink, or how you now can imagine it might be. Like if you haven't had healing kink experiences, but you're like, hey, I think I want to try this thing might be a healing kink exploration for me.
And yeah, excellent.
Michael DeMarco said that they can't post in the
I put it in there.
oh, you did. Thank you.
Yeah, I grabbed it
So
and I
good.
copied and pasted it. Yeah.
Self-forgiveness, absolutely.
Yeah.
Fear. Thank you for owning that. Whoever put in fear. Fear is really important. Not only because fear is one of my primary fetishes, but it's my primary fetish because I so firmly believe in the value of fear that you cannot have courage, bravery without fear. And so if we don't step into this with an acknowledgement of what we're afraid of, then we're limiting our possibilities for growth.
Right. And I like, just a little piggyback on that. We've got the panic attacks decrease while being tied up. Stepping into the fear, like directly into it, is one of the things that they tell you when you are diagnosed with anxiety, to help your anxiety. And also there's a somatic response of when there's pressure on your body, it helps you manage your panic attacks. So, healing kink in a number of ways can address mental health issues as well. So feeling safe again. Oh, these are so good.
The panic attacks thing also brings up that when I was working with a client a number of years ago, they wanted to do bondage work. They wanted to be tied up. It had nothing to do with sex. They didn't want to be naked. They didn't want pretty pictures taken of them. They weren't interested in the art. Like, don't put me in fancy art tie-ups. I just want to be immobilized and suspended. And so I tied my client up and lifted them so that they were just floating in the air and slowly rocking them. And this was kind of the birthplace of what became my meditative bondage practice, which is helping people get to a place where they can actually let go of control, but not have to be in charge, not have to be doing anything, right? So it often we do this dominance and control thing where I take your control and I have you doing things so that you're out of control, but then you're still having to behave, and you get the anxiety of, am I going to do it right? Am I going to do it wrong? Or whatever. And adding in this experience of just allowing someone to be swaddled in rope and floating, suspended. The client reported that it was like a 2.5 hour massage for their brain and body, because when we let go of the rope, they were completely relaxed. It's the first time that they could remember actually allowing themselves to relax, possibly in their entire life at that level. And it was so powerful for me as a practitioner to see the changed person from 2 hours earlier, when we were just talking through what we were going to do that night and the anxiety that was there, versus the relaxed person that called me the next day. And it was like, yeah, it was really beautiful. All right, so we have just a few moments left, just a few minutes. Were there any other like really hot questions that people wanted to throw into the chat to ask before we go? We really appreciate everyone's time and participation. Any other thoughts of wisdom you want to impart upon our participants?
Just a quick one. I see that somebody mentions being empowered after being marginalized, and that's just so powerful. I just thank you. Questions in the Q&A. They're mentioning a Q&A somewhere.
Thank you. I saw one that wasn't a question earlier. I can't comment on the screen,
right?
So I put it in chat.
Right. Yeah, I believe the book recommendations are on A Kink and the Cure, right?
Yeah, I'll pull it. I'm going to stop sharing. All right, so here in the chat is the resources page on my website. And it's basically mostly all of the resource documents that I used to write the original thesis for A Kink and the Cure. I'd offer to share it with you, but it's still in re-editing mode at the moment. The original thesis was written for, you know, a college environment, and so it's very like heady, and it's also 10 years old at this point. So I really wouldn't want to give it to you because my perceptions on it, the original material, have changed so much. I've never done the same show twice. Izzy has performed in some of the early versions of A Kink and the Cure, and it's been done as a one-person show, a two-person show, three-person show, and even a five-person performance, kind of like UFC for Vagina Monologues. But keep an eye on the website. We'll have new performances coming up soon.
Hi guys, I'm back in. I feel horrible about having to come and interrupt because everybody is obviously resonating so much with you. You've got such a great to and fro, but I've also got another wonderful lady coming up next.
Yeah.
And as much as I'd love to carry on, but we're going to have to cross over. Obviously, everybody, if there's loads of stuff coming in the chat, so please, if you want to hang on, just close your mute your mic and you shut your camera down, and you can still interact in the chat if you want to. But thank you so much for your time today.